that!
Hello guys, my name is Kiminek and welcome to 4Dummies, today featuring Vladimir, the Crimson Reaper. He no see me invisible.
I think not.
Alright, stop. Living up to the stereotype, are we? But still, if we think that the Garen's doing a completely dumbass thing by charging at me just to deal some pitiful damage, which I'm obviously going to heal straight away while poke him to fucking oblivion, you're absolutely correct. That's exactly what he's doing right now, and exactly what he was doing for the entirety of this fucking game. But in Garen's defense, which he apparently has a plenty of, what would you do if you were in his shoes? Because if I were him, I would do the exact same thing just to feel good about myself, as I would damage the biggest fucking cock block on the top lane. Which isn't all that good at countering cocks. But still, this champion counters everything else. Range, tank, assassin, he doesn't give a damn because as long as it doesn't have grievous wounds to counter his sack, it ain't gonna do a thing to him. And there's not that many champions that actually have it. Oh, I take that back. Just kidding. Even under the effects of grievous wounds, he's still annoying as fuck. He's tanky as all hell, he has an ultimate that increases his team's damage, and he has a spell that makes him untargetable. And if that wasn't enough to convince you that his Q isn't transfusing blood but liquefied cancer, let me tell you that he can just stay under his thread while poking you over and over and over again. There is just one single thing that's more annoying than this fucking poke, and those are Vladimir's spawns.
A draining exercise. Go ahead, be negative. You'll be just my type. Let's pool our efforts.
I'd kill you for that. If I actually fucking could! Do you know why Vladimir dislikes Germans? It's because they're butt first. It's contagious. Vladimir's passive is called Crimson Pang. Vladimir gains 2.5% of his bonus health as AP and 140% of his AP as bonus health. These bonuses do not stack with each other because otherwise we would most likely crash Rice Potato servers. Now, this ability comes from much simpler times when the Riot didn't need wall fucking saves to say that the guy has to reload after firing 4 shots. Instead of that, they hit you with this plain, simple and easy to understand ability that simply makes you tankier from building damage and deal more damage from building tanky. It's that simple. It would actually be quite fun and original ability if it wasn't for the fact that Vlad's a fucking mage and a fighter at the same time thanks to it. You know, like Cho'Gath or a fucking Gragas. Both which would probably give you diabetes if you suck them off.
I made an ambiguous joke.
This ability makes Vladimir one of the safest champions to play ever. You thought he was easy? You thought Mundo was easy? No, this guy gets over 4,000 health while going full AP. That's absolutely ridiculous. Thankfully it doesn't give you armor or anything like that, because otherwise this champion would be entirely unkillable. This way he's at least countered by champions with percentual HP damage such as Gnar, Mundo or Vayne.
Suck.
I thought we avoided them, but no, here they are, all nice and long, this says. What's even worse is that it's on his signature ability to suck, so I can't even avoid it. Whatever, let's just simplify it as much as I can since I'm too lazy to read it all out. Transfusion, Vladimir's Q, makes Vladimir suck the blood out of his enemies, dealing some magical damage to them while healing himself for a tiny amount. After casting this ability, Vladimir gains a stack of Bloodthirst, this white thingy, over the duration of the transfusion's cooldown. Upon reaching 2 stacks of Bloodthirst, this bar turns red. And as you probably might know from playing against Renekton, Shyvana, Jhin, or basically any other champion with a bar under their health that turns red at one point or another, you know that when it does, you gotta run the fuck away from them, as they'll run your ass down Formula 1 style.
Let me see your Big Mac, nigga!
No, God! Yeah, boy.
Fuck off!
Same goes for Vladimir, because once he gets 2 stacks of Bloodthirst, he goes into Crimson Rush, getting 10% bonus movement speed for half a second and the ability to cast an empowered version of his Q for 2.5 seconds. This empowered version of his Q deals more damage and heals him for a percentage of his missing health. However, if he manages to run away and he's not able to cast his Q onto anything, this includes minions, so not very often, he's gonna go back to 0 stacks. Now in case that you are playing Vladimir, there is also a little known trick to keep the Crimson Rush active for a bit longer, and that's by casting in Vladimir's E or W, both of which will slow down the rate at which Crimson Rush depletes significantly. This means that you can prolong the duration of the Crimson Rush by up to 3.5 seconds, which is pretty damn cool, not to mention useful. The transfusion is Vladimir's bread and butter ability. You will cast it constantly whether on lane or in teamfights. It costs nothing but has low base damage, pretty meh scaling and 9 seconds long cooldown at level 1, which is insanely long, so in early game it's almost completely useless and most of the time you will deal far more damage with your basic attacks alone. And let's be honest here, they are not exactly greatest. But after you max this ability out and get some cooldown reduction, this ability becomes a fucking new for HP bars. At that point you will just run around the rev, sucking people off while trying to make a decent living off of that. What's not to love? Well, probably like everything, especially the fact that I'm getting chased by a sexual predator ice cream. Vladimir's W is called Sanguine Pool and is the second most annoying ability in his kit right after his Q. Why is it so annoying though? Well, it's because apart from having 28 seconds long cooldown, it also makes him untargetable and mainly intangible. And intangible is like way worse than untargetable, because even after reading this tooltip for 7 fucking times, I still can't understand what it does. It supposedly allows units to move through you, exactly like the Ghosted buff, but it is distinct from the Ghosted, because Ghosted allows you to move through units, while Intangible allows units to move through you. What? Now that I'm thinking about it, what if Vladimir's a communist? You know, he's named Vladimir, he's got red color everywhere, but mainly, he's got a tendency to share his health with others. It's not your health, it's our health. The ability itself transfers Vladimir into a state of communism on the ground. Enemies standing up to 350 units away from Vladimir will start slowly dying of hunger, which will deal minor damage to them every half a second and slow them by 40%. Additionally, Vladimir will launch a propaganda to heal from the suffering of his opponents. It is not some particular powerful ability, but if used correctly, it can be one hell of a cancer to deal with. Just imagine Fizz, but instead of a sushi that's gracefully hopping on the rolls, you are a puddle of menstrual blood. Zuck! Like he steals your personal liquids, you know, like your blood, like, it makes sense. Guys, come on. Please subscribe to my channel. Vladimir's E is called Tides of Blood and has 2 parts. During the first part, Vladimir charges up this ability for up to 1.5 seconds, during which he increases his damage and briefly slows himself. However, the damage is increasing only during the first second of him casting this ability. During the last half a second, the ability will no longer gain more damage, but instead will briefly slow Vladimir by 20%. The second cast unleashes a nova of blood bolts, each of which collide with the first enemy they hit, dealing the magic damage that is... What the hell was that sentence, Vikia? Simply said, upon releasing this ability, Vladimir deals some magic damage around him, which functions similar to Ash's W, but with lower range and higher damage. Additionally, if Vladimir gets interrupted, casts this ability for longer than 1.5 seconds, or preemptively releases this ability because you fat finger the flash, which honestly said happens quite a lot, Vladimir automatically initiates the second cast. Be careful because this doesn't apply to Vladimir dying. So yeah. Overall, this ability is pretty weak early on, not really because of its damage, cooldown or anything like that. It's weak due to the sheer fact that there are minions on the lane. Yes, you heard right, fucking minions. Those little shits might not tank much, but they are able to completely negate the damage of your E, and if the enemy is smart enough to realize that, you won't get to hit a single E throughout the entire laning phase. However, if you manage to survive all the way to the late game, this ability becomes a true teamfight wrecker. Seriously, the scaling that this thing has is absolutely ridiculous. Just look at it. You see it? Do you fucking see that shit? Oh, and I'm not even talking about the fact that you can cast this ability and your W at the same time, so you can swing this through the enemy AD carry while their entire team's like, this is fine. Because they can't do a thing to you, they can just watch as their AD carry is getting raped. Is anyone even playing AD carries nowadays? Imbuing him with his master's magical essence, and that of every hemomancer before him. So Vladimir's a hemomancer. You know, at first I thought that he's like some kind of a vampire, but apparently he's a hemomancer. Jesus. Couldn't you just call him a blood mage? This sounds like that one smartass that always learns everything in Latin just to show off.
I got no navitas. I got 300 habebat potestatem. I got no I am hit.
witnessed. Last ability in Vladimir's kit is his ultimate, called Hemoplague. Once again with this hemo bullshittery. But still, usually once you hear the word ultimate, you imagine something of truly epic proportions, but that's not really the case with this ability, because the most ultimate thing about it is the sound effect it has. Yeah, it's quite loud. Jesus fucking hell, it scared the shit out of me the first time I heard it. This thing is louder than Misfortune having an orgasmic rampage from firing her ultimate. But still, after using Hemoplague, Vladimir creates a circle of blood on the ground which will leave a mark on all enemies hit. A mark that's both emotional and physical. The physical part of a mark will increase the damage they take by 10%, and after 4 seconds it will detonate, dealing high amounts of damage. Additionally, each detonation heals Vladimir, but every heal past the first one is reduced by 50%. Surprisingly enough, the Hemoplague amplifies its own damage, so the real damage and scaling of this ability is actually a bit higher than what is shown. But do you remember as I said that this ability is not somewhat ultimate as they say? Well, it's mostly because of how clunky this ability is to use. Like, don't get me wrong, it has pretty mediocre range and it's almost impossible to miss, but well, Vladimir has no mobility, so the enemy can see your fat 15 OS turning around from a mile away, and you better have your flash ready at that point, because otherwise you'll just end up doing this. However, sometimes you hit that one juicy ultimate, and at that point you just single-handedly won the teamfight for your team. The damage of this ability doesn't even matter, but the healing that you get from this ability is absolutely fucking disgusting. Just look at this shit. They can start killing me all over again. Overall, if it comes to Vladimir, he's one of those champions that's completely hated by Riot, because as they already said a couple of times,
you're one sandwich away from fat.
And well, they are correct. He's a ranked champion specialized at sustain and escaping. That's one hell of a challenge to balance out, especially in the early game, so obviously Riot nerfed him to fucking oblivion in the early game. However, now you can at least use it to your advantage and stomp the shit out of him early on, because if he's gonna get to the mid game, he's not gonna be just sucking your HP bars away. He's going to suck your very life essence away, your will to live. You're gonna be the goddamn Ukraine, and he's going to suck your Crimea away, and there is nothing you can do against it. So if you don't stop his amazing scaling early, you just dantedly cucked yourself by doing so. Now we have got to just hope that you get a champion in your team that's better at late game than freaking Vladimir. That's also not an AD carry, because Vladimir in late game is gonna be this unkillable puddle of Kool-Aid that's gonna slowly crawl to your AD carry and try to infect it with fucking communism. And yeah, you can try to fight against that. Either way, this is gonna be the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, because I was already running out of my shitty jokes. Still though, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give a like, comment, share this video, but mainly please subscribe to my channel, since I'm quite close to hitting that sweet 1000. Still though, hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I'll see you next time. Bye. Also, Jungle Vladimir doesn't fucking work.